With us, you're still watching The Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. It's time to take the global stories that have made it to the front pages of our national dailies this morning. And joining us to review the papers is Professor Kamilu Sani Fage. He's from the Department of Political Science, Bayero University, Kano. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. All right, so we'll begin with the Punch this morning, and the Punch leads with serial outages. Dangote, NNPCL, Total, 247 firms dump discos, generate 6,500 megawatts. The writer here says operators blame poor supply for move, and federal government laments exit from national grid. So, of course, these are top players in their industries, and they need electricity. Now they have to move out to ensure that they are able to generate their own power, and the federal government is lamenting. But for companies like this, especially Total or even manufacturing companies, what does that mean for, the national system, our own electrical system? Because, of course, that means whatever monies they're supposed to be generating from these companies, they won't have that anymore because they've definitely started, generating their own power. And for Nigeria, that is known to generate just about 4,000 megawatts, we're seeing these companies provide for themselves about 6,500, and it's just a minute fraction when you think of the entire population of Nigeria, whereby we're over 200 million people and we're just generating about 4,000 megawatts to serve that amount of people. But with these companies, they're doing even a lot more for themselves. What does that mean for the revenue that is going to be lost here? And then how can the federal government ensure that they're generating more power to serve all of these companies and serve all Nigerians at large?
Yeah, you see, this is going to be a serious blow to the electricity sector.
Yeah.
Because they are moving out, or they have already moved out, and they are generating more than what our national grid generates. So what it means simply is that the national grid, or whatever, PSCN, will lose a lot of money because these are high consumers, and you look at what they are generating. From there, I think it is going to cripple the system. Secondly, if you look at it on the other side, maybe it will provide competition with the NEPA or whatever called, I'm using the old name, PHCN. There may be competition. Perhaps this will make them to sit down and tighten their belt and see that they generate more electricity, and they should be more efficient, so that at least that will now lure other people, other distance to come in. Supposing they are able to generate it more efficiently and cheaper. And I think even those companies that are thinking of going might come back to continue with that. Otherwise, this is actually a threat to the company, because by the time you have such huge consumers living out, it will not only mean that you don't get revenue from that, but it will also entice others to leave. And what we are going to have is the system will continue to collapse because there is no, users, and there is no revenue that it will be generated.
Yeah, I honestly cannot blame them. So even when I saw the story, I'm like, I cannot blame them, because of course they need this power. But I'm sure the thoughts of the common man right now is, are we going to see a lot more? Because if most of these companies are leaving and being able to generate theirs, if you consolidate what they're generating and what we have from the national grid, that's about 10,000 megawatts now. So at least they've taken a huge load off the national grid. Does that mean we'll be able to enjoy more electricity, or nah?
No, we are not going to. Even though logically, simply it will mean that there will be less competition of the minimum this thing that is being generated. But the fact is now the cost of generation will be higher. And either they will now pass it on to the ordinary person in order to stay afloat. Otherwise, they will be running at a loss. So if they are running at a loss, you see, simply, it means they will either cut off the generation or they will increase the fee, the cost of it. And whichever, the consumers, the ordinary person will be at, a receiving end.
Well, that is, I'm sure that's what a lot of people do not want to hear, because especially if they've been threatening us with electricity tariff, of course, subsidy for electricity being gone and what have you. I know that one thing that has been said over time on this show is the fact that maybe we just need to move it over to privatization, especially when it comes to the transmission company, because of course Nigeria still holds, the government still holds TCN, and maybe we should just do that and ensure that other people can be players of it and we can start to generate more power, because it's the bloodline of the nation, one of the bloodlines of the nation. Anyways, so another story here says NAF unveils tough rules to curb airmen's exodus. So, of course, like the health sector, a lot of people had to leave. People have, in local parlance, jackpot, and we saw that brain drain in that sector. Now, it's the aviation sector as well, and NAF is trying to unveil tough rules to ensure that people are not leaving. But can you really stop people, especially if the country is not conducive enough for them? What do you think they should be doing right now? Is it looking for rules and strict regulations in this to ensure that people do not leave, or they're supposed to be thinking of how to make it enticing so that there is the pull factor, we're pulling people in and not pushing them out? What's your take?
Yeah, you see, the only way out is to create a conducive atmosphere by which people will be now enticed to come, or those who are already in, they will not feel the urge to leave the system. And how do you make it? Now you create a conducive atmosphere, like I said. There should be working good environment, in terms of material, in terms of equipment and other things. There should be, and standard, they should be up to standard. And secondly, there should be pay, good pay, because people are moving. You see, it is not just because people want to park and Japa and leave Nigeria, but the fact is that there is a condition that is attracting people outside, to leave Nigeria. So you create such condition here. And what does it mean? It means that the welfare of the people the workers have to be taken seriously in terms of pay, in terms of, other welfare packages, and also the system. You don't have such a dilapidated system and you expect people to stay, especially professional. Go to our airport and see virtually cancellation is virtually every day, and there is no electricity, no good equipment. There are all sorts of hazards there. So you have to create that condition in order for you to attract and retain good caliber people to work in the country.
Thank you so much for that. All right, we'll move over to the Vanguard and let's dive into the oil sector a little bit. So the Vanguard leads with OPEC quota eludes Nigeria amid rising oil output. Now, the writers here says, why oil output rises, Lupobiri, pipeline vandalism, theft, others hinder output. And then most of all spills caused by oil theft, sabotage, according to Shell. NNPC security agencies uncover 33 illegal oil connections. Investors go for new oil gas assets, and we've introduced critical regulations. That's according to NUPRC. So we're making a lot of oil. Like, we are a nation that is blessed with this natural resources whereby we have oil and we can sell it out, to other parts of the world. But sadly, we're not getting as much as we should, because first, it's been said that our oil has been mortgaged for years to come. That's one. Two, even whatever we're producing right now, we don't know how much we're producing. Three, most of these oil pipelines, they get vandalized so many times by locals. And four, even if we're successful to, bring out something, there's still oil theft in Nigeria, and that is a huge, huge factor. So, of course, we're losing money on all sides. And this is something that has become, our own way of generating resources for the country. But what is your take on this? How can we put our house in order to ensure that we're curbing out vandalism and theft, to ensure that, we know how much we're generating, to ensure transparency and accountability in that area? What do you think Nigeria needs to do, or the government needs to do, to put us on that mark when it comes to our OPEC quota?
Yeah, you see, this is not a new story.
Yeah.
This has been going on for years. Okay, one is the fact that all this theft and vandalism, they go scotch-free.
Yeah.
Every time there is this news and people they say they have arrested this and so on, nothing is done to them. So by the time you don't have punitive measures on those who are vandalizing the thing, it will continue. Secondly, is that we don't even control the production. We don't know how much is being produced.
Yeah.
Other, OPEC members can trace even a drop in terms of what is being, produced in their own countries. And yet, we have been producing these things for over almost 60 years, and we don't have control. We allow the foreign companies, to, produce, exhume the oil, and then we don't know how much. They will just depend on what they tell us that this is what they are able to produce. So unless Nigeria takes serious steps to actually Nigerianize the sector and to actually take, stern measures on those who are vandalizing it, we are going to miss this quota, OPEC quota, every year. And the other thing, and the third dimension, is that unless we make the system, the oil, affordable to Nigerians, by the time we are increasing this, we are just leaving the real culprit and we are passing it on to the ordinary person. So the government has to take the bull by the horn and take these stern measures to see how they can actually control the production and, check, vandalization and theft, and make sure that we also have it is Nigerian material, and so we should make it available. We should make sure that we control it and make it Nigerians' own, as other countries have done in their own areas.
All right. Of course, there's a lot going on in the oil sector, and we need to ensure that everything is, is being put in place. And, there's that accountability and transparency that we know what we have, and we're trying to safeguard it, especially if that's, how we make money. Let's move over to the nation. The nation leads
And actually, we have to fight corruption in the sector, and
yes,
that is the major problem.
Exactly. Because the oil theft, that's corruption right there. And, there are people who turn a blind eye, even when that happens, like you said, they're not arrested. There is no justice for that sector. It's almost like you can do whatever you want and you go scot-free. But if we're trying to curb corruption, if we're trying to ensure that there is no more theft, then we can now know this is what we have, this is what we're working with, and yeah. All right, so let's move over to the nation. The nation leads with federal government ministerial panel to enforce council autonomy. The writer here says AGF to begin direct disbursement. Committee begins 2-day meeting, urging to brief president. So, of course, they're meeting, and some of the modalities that they'll be discussing is the enforcement of, the Apex Court verdict, where it says local governments can now have their own financial autonomy, because, of course, we have 3 tiers of government in Nigeria. We start from the federal government, and then we have the state government, and then the local government. But in times past, we've seen that it's the state government that still rules the affairs of the local government, and in a way, people say it hinders development in those local government, because, of course, everybody's from a local government, and if you want development, it should start from the grassroots. So this has been a conversation for a while now, And here we're seeing it come to light where the committee is to, have that meeting. Of course, Edwin is going to brief the president, disbursement for this. How do you think these local governments should manage their funds, especially when it's coming? And how can they work in tandem with the state government to ensure the development of the entire state?
Yeah, you see, the committee is a good thing that they are looking at the way to implement finally the Supreme Court ruling. But the fact is that unless you accompany that financial autonomy with administrative and political autonomy, you will just be changing, the whole process. You will pass it on to the local government. But if the local government are still not independent administratively and politically, I think the governors will find a way to, literally hijack these monies and make sure that we are in the same place. The only thing is for the government to look beyond just the ceremony of passing, dispersing the money to local government. They have to make sure that governors do not find a way to sabotage the system, because the way we have even these current elections, local government elections, for sure, it is just going to be nominal, that autonomy, because most of the governors put on their own stooges in the local government. So whatever happens, they are going to direct it underground to make sure that the system continues as, as usual, meaning they will get the money from local government, and by yet the governors will find a way of siphoning it. So unless the committee looks into this issue seriously and put in measures, so that at least the governors will finally allow the local government to operate. So if that happens, I think we are going to see grassroots development, and eventually we are going to see national development also.
Yeah. I love the fact that you just spoke about, grassroots development and then national development also, because it starts from the grassroots and then it works its way up. If we want Nigeria to be developed, to be that developed nation, we cannot just keep saying it, oh, we want Nigeria to be developed. We have to start from somewhere. And it's basically one task at a time, one local government at a time. So as you start from there, before you know it, everywhere is developed. So we definitely want to see more of that with their financial autonomy and ensuring that they have the whole political autonomy as well, not just putting it on books that, yes, we're independent. All right, so there's another story on The Nation that kind of caught my attention, and this talks about INEC plans diaspora inmate voting and 2023 polls reviewed. So one thing that has been said in Nigeria is the fact that most people who are not in Nigeria cannot vote. And, even that's even a whole lot. For instance, I as a person, if I wanted to vote and maybe my PVC was somewhere else in Delta State, I cannot vote here in Lagos just because my PVC is somewhere else. And I think in 2025, now in 2023, as of the last election, we should have gotten to the point where you can vote from anywhere, the comfort of your home. You can vote online. And of course, there needs to be things to processes and systems to be able to mitigate, maybe vote rigging or something like that. But now that INEC is planning for this, rolling this out, first, what do you think about the initiative, and how do you think they should go about it to ensure that everybody can vote? Because inmate voting is also here, and it's a civil right. You have the right to vote for your leaders. So how can they go about it, in your own opinion? Because, of course, you're from the Department of Political Science. How can they go about it, and what should we be expecting from them come 2027?
Yeah, you see, one thing is you need a database, and so that you have a credible database within which you can operate. And how do you do it? You now computerize the system. So by the time you computerize it, anybody, anywhere, you can get it. Just like your ATM card. You don't have to go into your bank in order to get money, because you have a data. So if you have the system, system that, is computerized, anywhere, everywhere, anybody can vote. And that is one thing. Secondly, you must back this thing by the law. I mean, by law. Unless you now take stiff measures on, anybody who tries to, rig the system, and you take, a certain measures, stiff measures on him or her, and that is when you can discourage people try to abuse the system. Even smaller countries that don't have, the kind of this, for long they have been doing it here. Like here in Kano, Niger has a consulate here. And every time they have election, if you pass by, you see Nigerian people voting in their consulate. Okay, our neighbor here in Nigeria is doing it. So what we have to do is we have to accompany it with computerization. We have to also make sure that the laws are stringent. And then there has to be massive public enlightenment, about that, about, a political education, so that people will be aware and that they will have it. And then there should be fairness in terms of diaspora. Because most of the time, you see why this issue of the diaspora is going to raise an eyebrow is that when you talk of diaspora, people just put emphasis on those who are in either America, Britain, or Canada, or Western countries. But nobody talks of the people, Nigerians, who are like in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and other places. So unless you widen this system, when you talk of diaspora, look at even people who are within Africa, who are within other, part of the country, of the world. And all you need to do is to make sure that they go to Nigerian embassies and they register, and then you now have a complete database so that you can use it as a system. Otherwise, it is going to generate a lot of controversy. I'm telling you, if you don't have that credible database, so what is going to happen is that there will be massive rigging, and that will jeopardize the system.
Yeah. I mean, we saw things like that happen in the U.S., for instance, when Donald Trump won at his first term in office. And, there was that controversy that there was obviously rigging. So if Nigeria is going to come into play, a lot of stones need to be turned to ensure that they do their due diligence even before going into this. Anyways, this is where we have to wrap up this segment. We want to say thank you so much, Professor Kamilu Sani Fage. It's always a pleasure reviewing the papers with you. Thank you, sir. All right, so we're speaking with Professor Kamilu Sani Fage. He's from the Department of Political Science, Bayero University, Kano. And we've just been taking the global stories that made it to the front pages of our national dailies. We'll go on a short break now. When we return, we'll be discussing our first hot topic. And this one definitely talks about Lagos government, who's urging workers to rethink the planned strike. So please stay with us.